Today I'm going to read you the 9th task in chapter 3 of this book. And this chapter is about a psychological story that has been told in fairy tales for millennia. And just to give you a sense of what this is about, this is from the introduction, which you can link to in the links below this video. Intuition is the treasure of a woman's psyche. It is like a divining instrument and like a crystal through which one can see with uncanny interior vision. It is like a wise old woman who is with you always, who tells you exactly what the matter is, tells you exactly whether you need to go left or right. It is a form of the one who knows, the wild woman. Later on in the intro it says, it is about infusing human women with wild woman's primary instinctual power, intuition. I've previously read the fairy tale, The Doll in Her Pocket, Vasilisa the Wise. You can find the story through the link attached to this video. And you can find the other 8 tasks through the links below. There is also a summary of the 8 tasks, which has been translated into Arabic. This is the 9th task, recasting the shadow. Vasilisa journeys toward home with the fiery skull on the stick. She almost throws it away, but the skull reassures her. Once back home, the skull watches the stepsisters and stepmother and burns them to ashes. Vasilisa lives well and for a long time afterward. These are the psychic tasks of this time. Using one's acute vision, fiery eyes, to recognize and react to the negative shadow of one's own psyche and/or negative aspects of persons and events in the outer world. Recasting the negative shadows in one's psyche with Hagfire, the wicked stepfamily which formerly tortured Vasilisa, is turned to cinders. Now keep in mind that this wicked stepmother and wicked stepsisters are features of one's own psyche. The story contains many features that appear in the Cinderella story that is widely spread in Western culture. And in that story, as you no doubt know, there is a stepmother and wicked stepsisters, and once again, they are features of the psyche. Reading on. Vasilisa has the fiery skull on a stick held before her as she walks through the forest, and her doll indicates the way back. Go this way, now this way. Vasilisa, who used to be a blueberry-eyed sweet muffin, is now a woman walking with her power before her. A fiery light emanates from the eyes, ears, and nose and mouth of the skull. It is a representation of all the psychic processes which have to do with discrimination. It is related to ancestor kinship and therefore to remembering. If the Yaga had given Vasilisa a knee bone on a stick, that would require a different symbolic rendering. If she had given her a wrist bone, a neck bone, or any other bone, other than perhaps the female pelvis, it would not mean the same thing. So the skull is another representation of intuition. It does not hurt the Yaga or Vasilisa. It has a discrimination of its own. Vasilisa now carries the blaze of knowing. She has those fierce senses. She can hear, see, smell, and taste them out, and she has herself. She has the doll. She has Yaga sensibilities. Now she has the fiery skull as well. Momentarily, Vasilisa becomes afraid of the power she carries, and she thinks to throw the fiery skull away. With this formidable power at her behest, it is no wonder her ego thinks perhaps it would be better, easier, safer to discard this burning light, for it is so much, and through it Vasilisa has become so much. But a supernatural voice from the skull instructs her to stay calm and to proceed, and this she is able to do. Each woman who retrieves her intuition and Yaga-like powers reaches a point where she is tempted to throw them away, for what is the use of seeing and knowing all these things? This skull light is not forgiving. It is light. The old are elderly, the beautiful lush, the silly foolish, the drunk are drunken, the unfaithful are infidels. Things which are incredible are noted as miracles. Skull light sees what it sees. It is an eternal light, and right out front, shining ahead of a woman, like a presence which goes a little bit before her and reports back to her what it has found ahead. It is her perpetual reconnaissance. Yet, when one sees and senses thusly, then one has to work to do something about what one sees. To possess good intuition, goodly power, causes work. It causes work firstly in the watching and comprehending of negative forces and imbalances, both inward and outward. Secondly, it causes striving in the gathering up of will in order to do something about what one sees, be it for good or balance or to allow something to die. It is true, it will not lie to you. It is easier to throw away the light and go to sleep. It is true, it is hard to hold the skull light out before us sometimes, for with it we clearly see all sides of ourselves and others, both the disfigured and the divine, and all conditions in between. Yet with this light, the miracles of deep beauty in the world and in humans come to consciousness. With this penetrating light, one can see past the bad action to the good heart. One can espy the sweet spirit crushed beneath hatred. One can understand much instead of being perplexed only. This light can differentiate layers of personality, intention, and motives in others. It can determine consciousness and unconsciousness in self and others. It is the wand of knowing. It is the mirror in which all things are sensed. It is the deep, wild nature. Yet there are times when its reports are painful, almost too much to bear. For also the fiery skull points out where there are betrayals brewing, where there is a faintness of courage in those who speak otherwise. It points out envy lying like cold grease behind a warm smile. It points out the looks which are mere masks for dislike. As regards oneself, its light is equally bright. It shines on our treasures and on our foibles. It is these knowings which are the most difficult to face. It is at this point that we always want to throw away all this damnable shrewd knowing of ours. It is here that we feel, if we will not ignore it, a strong force from the self saying, "Do not throw me away. Keep me. You'll see." As Vasilisa weaves through the forest, she no doubt is thinking too about the stepfamily which had maliciously sent her off to die. And though she herself is sweet of heart, the skull is not sweet. Its work is to be sightful. So when she wishes to toss it away, we know that she is thinking of the pain it causes to know some things and certain things about self, about others, and about the nature of the world. She arrives home, and the stepmother and stepsisters tell her they had no fire. no energy while she was away, that no matter what they did, they could not make light. And this is the exact truth in a woman's psyche when she is in her wildish power. During that time, the things which have oppressed her have no libido. It is all taken up in the good journey. Without libido, the nastier aspects of the psyche, those which exploit the creative life of a woman or encourage her to while away her life in minutiae, these become like gloves with no hands in them. The fiery skull begins to peer at the stepsisters and stepmother, watches and watches them intently. Can a negative aspect of the psyche be reduced to cinder by being watched and watched? Yes, indeed it can. Holding it in consistent consciousness can cause the thing to dehydrate. In one version of the tale, the errant family members are burnt to a crisp. In another version, to 3 small black cinders. The 3 small black cinders hold a very old and interesting idea. The little black dit or dot is often thought of as a beginning of life. In the Old Testament, when that God made first man and first woman, he fashioned them from earth, dirt, mud, depending on which translation one reads. Just how much earth, no one says, but among other creation stories, the beginning of the world and of its inhabitants is often made from the dit, from one grain, one single tiny dark dot of something. In this manner, the 3 small cinders are in the province of the life, death, life mother. They are reduced down almost to nothing in the psyche. They are deprived of libido. Now something new can occur. In most cases, when we consciously deprive a psychic thing of juice, it shrivels and its energy is released or reconfigured. There is another side of this draining of the destructive stepfamily. One cannot keep the consciousness one has earned by meeting the hag goddess and carrying the fiery light and so forth if one lives with cruel people outwardly and inwardly. If you are surrounded by people who cross their eyes and look with disgust up at the ceiling when you are in the room, when you speak, when you act and react, then you are with people who douse passions, yours and probably their own as well. These are not the people who care about you, your work, and your life. A woman must choose her friends and lovers wisely, for both can become like a bad stepmother and rotten stepsisters. In the case of our lovers, we often invest them with the power of a great mage, a great magician. This is easy to do, for if we become truly intimate, it is like unlocking a lead crystal atelier, a magic one, or so it feels to us. A lover can engender and or destroy even our most durable connections to our own psyches. A lover can engender and or destroy even our most durable connections to our own cycles and ideas. The destructive lover must be avoided. A better sort of lover is one finely wrought of strong psychic muscle and tender flesh. For wild women, it also helps if the lover is just a little bit psychic too, a person who can see into her heart. When the wildish woman has an idea, the friend or lover will never say, "Well, I don't know, sounds really dumb, grandiose, undoable, expensive, etc." to me. A right friend will never say that. They might say instead, "I don't know if I understand. Tell me how you see it. Tell me how it will work." Having a lover friend who regards you as a living, growing creatora, just as much as the trees from the ground, or a focus in the house, or a rose garden out in the side yard. Having a lover and friends who look at you as a true living, breathing entity one that is human but made of very fine and moist and magical things as well. A lover and friends who support the creatura in you. These are the people you are looking for. They will be the friends of your soul for life. Mindful choosing of friends and lovers, not to mention teachers, is critical to remaining conscious, remaining intuitive, remaining in charge of the fiery light that sees and knows. The way to maintain one's connection to the wild is to ask yourself what it is that you want. This is the sorting of the seed from the dirt. One of the most important discriminations we can make in this matter is the difference between things that beckon to us and things that call from our souls. This is how it works. Imagine a smorgasbord laid out with whipped cream and salmon and bagels and roast beef and fruit salad and green enchiladas and rice and curry and yogurt and many, many things for table after table after table. Imagine that you survey it all and that you see certain things that appeal to you. You remark it yourself. Oh, I would really like to have one of those and one of that and some of this other thing. Some men and women make their life decisions in this way. There is around and about us a constant beckoning world, one which insinuates itself into our lives, arousing and creating appetite where there was little or none before. In this sort of choice, we choose a thing because it just happened to be beneath our noses at that moment in time. It is not necessarily what we want, but it is interesting, and the longer we gaze at it, the more compelling it becomes. When we are connected to the instinctual self, to the soul of the feminine, which is natural and wild, then instead of looking over whatever happens to be on display, we say to ourselves, what am I hungry for? Without looking at anything outwardly, we venture inward and ask, what do I long for? What do I wish for now? Alternate phrases are, what do I crave? What do I desire? For what do I yearn? And the answer usually arrives rapidly. Oh, I think I want ... You know what would be really good is some this or that ... Ah, yes, that's what I really want. Is that on the smorgasbord? Maybe yes and maybe no. In most cases, probably not. We will have to quest for it a little bit, sometimes for a considerable time, but in the end we shall find it, and be glad we took soundings about our deeper longings. This discrimination which Vasilisa learns as she separates poppy seeds from dirt and mildewed corn from fresh corn is one of the most difficult things to learn, for it takes spirit, will, and soulfulness, and it often means holding out for what one wants. Nowhere can this be seen more clearly than in the choice of mates and lovers. A lover cannot be chosen a la smorgasbord. A lover has to be chosen from soul craving. To choose just because something mouth-watering stands before you will never satisfy the hunger of the soul self. And that is what intuition is for. It is a direct messenger of the soul. To amplify further, if you are presented with an opportunity to buy a bicycle or an opportunity to travel to Egypt and see the pyramids, you have to set the opportunity aside for the moment, enter into yourself, and ask, what am I hungry for? What do I long for? Maybe I'm hungry for a motorcycle instead of a bicycle. Maybe I'm hungry for a trip to see my grandmother, who's coming up in years. The decisions do not have to be so large. Sometimes the matter to be weighed is taking a walk versus making a poem. Momentous or mundane, the idea is to have consulted the instinctual self through one or several aspects available to you, the doll self, the old Baba Yaga self, the fiery skull. Another way to strengthen connection to intuition is to refuse to allow anyone to repress your vivid energies. That means your opinions, your thoughts, your ideas, your values, your morals, your ideals. There is very little right, wrong, or good, bad in this world. There is, however, useful and not useful. There are also things that are sometimes destructive, as well as things which are engendering. But as you well know, a garden has to be turned in the fall in order to prepare it for the spring. It cannot bloom all the time. But let your own innate cycles dictate the upsurges and the down spirals of your life, not another person outside yourself. There are certain constant entropies and creatings which are a part of our inner cycles. It is our task to synchronize with them. Like the chambers of a heart which fill and empty and fill again, we learn the rhythm of this life-death-life cycle instead of becoming martyred by it. Liken it to a jump rope. The rhythm already exists. You sway back and forth until you are copying the rhythm. Then you jump in. That's how it's done. It is no more fancy than that. Further, intuition provides options. When you are connected to the instinctual self, you always have at least 4 choices, the 2 opposites, and then the middle ground, and taken under further contemplation. If you're not vested in the intuitive, you may think you only have 1 choice, and often that is an undesirable one, and you feel that you should suffer about it, and submit, and force yourself to do it. No, there's a better way. Listen to the inner hearing, the inner seeing, the inner being. Follow it. It knows what to do next. One of the most remarkable things about using intuition and the instinctive nature is that it causes a sure-footed spontaneity to erupt. Spontaneity doesn't mean being unwise. It is not a pounce and blurt attribute. Good boundaries are still important. Scheherazade, for instance, had pretty good boundaries. She used her cleverness to please while at the same time positioning herself to be valued. She used her cleverness to please while at the same time positioning herself to be valued. Being real doesn't mean being reckless. It means allowing the mythological voice to speak. One does that by shutting off the ego for a while and letting that which wishes to speak, speak. In the consensual reality, we all have access to little wild mothers in the flesh. These are women who, as soon as you see them, something in you leaps, something in you thinks, Mama. You take one look and think, I am her progeny, I am her child, she is my mother, my grandmother. In the case of hombre con pecos, in the case of a man with breasts, you might think, oh, grandfather, or oh, brother, my friend. You just know that this man is nurturing. Paradoxically, they are strongly masculine and strongly feminine at the same time. They are like fairy godmother, like mentor, like the mother who never had. They are like fairy godmother, like mentor, like the mother you never had or did not have long enough. That is an hombre con pecos. That is an hombre con pecos. All these human beings could be called little wild mothers. Usually everyone has at least one. If we are lucky, throughout a lifetime we will have several. You are usually grown or at least in your late adolescence by the time you meet them. They are vastly different from the Too Good Mother. The little wild mothers guide you. Burst with the little the little wild mo- the little wild mothers guide you. Burst with pride over your accomplishments. They are critical of blockages around your creative, sensual, spiritual, and intellectual life. We have seen that to be dumb and too sweet is dangerous. But perhaps you are still not convinced. Perhaps you're thinking, oh lordy, who wants to be like Vasilisa? And I'm telling you, you do. You want to be like her. Accomplish what she has accomplished and follow the trail she has left with her passing, for it is the way of retaining and developing your soul. Because the wild woman is the one who dares, who creates, and who destroys. She is the primitive and inventing soul that makes all creative acts and arts possible. She creates a forest around us, and we begin to deal with life from that fresh and original perspective. So, here at the end of the resetting of initiation into the feminine psyche, we have a young woman with formidable experiences who has learnt to follow her knowing. She has endured through all of the tasks to a full initiation. The crown is hers. Perhaps intuition is the easier of the tasks, but holding it in consciousness and letting live what can live and letting die what must die is by far the most strenuous, yet so satisfying. Baba Yaga is the same as Mother Nyx, the mother of the world, another life, death, life goddess. The life, death, life goddess is always also a creator goddess. She makes, fashions, breathes life into. She is there to receive the soul when the breath has run out. Following her footprints, we endeavor to learn to let be born what must be born, whether all the right people are there or not. Nature does not ask permission. Blossom and birth whenever you feel like it. As adults, we need little permission, but rather more engendering, much more encouraging of the wild cycles. To let things die is the theme at the end of the tale. Vasilisa has learned well. Does she collapse into a fit of high-pitched shrieking as the skull burns into the malicious ones? No. What must die, dies. How does one make such a decision? One knows. La que sabe knows. La que sabe knows. Ask within for her advice. She is the mother of the ages. Nothing surprises her. She has seen it all. For most women, to let die is not against their natures. It is only against their training. This can be reversed. We all know in Los Alvarios when it is time for life, when it is time for death. We might try to fool ourselves for various reasons, but we know. By the light of the fiery skull, we know. This concludes my reading of this book. This concludes my reading of this book, Chapter 3. I hope you have enjoyed the reading. I hope you have enjoyed the reading and will tell your friends about where to find it. These videos are unlisted, and so in order for your friends to find them, they must be given the link. They will not. These videos are unlisted, and these video these videos are unlisted, and in order to find them, your friends need to be given the links. These videos are unlisted, and in order to find them, your friends must be given the links. They will not be able to find them on Google.